Khorshed Yast, Yast of the sun. This Yast is recited at any time, but particularly on the days consecrated to the sun and to Kshatra area. Shahrifar, in other words. Metra, Meher, in other words. Asman, Asman, in other words. And Anangra Ra'aka'u, and Ebron, in other words. The last three, Metra, Asman, the heaven, Anagra, the midnight light, have a natural connection with the sun, but its connection with Kshatra Vairya is not so clear. Of this Yast, we have a Pahlavi, a Persian, and a Sanskrit translation. 0. May Ahura Mazda be rejoiced, and so on. Asham Bahu, holiness is the best of all good, and so on. I confess myself a worshipper of Mazda, a follower of Zarathustra, one who hates the Da'avas and obeys the laws of Ahura for sacrifice, prayer, propitiation, and glorification unto Havana, the holy and master of holiness, and so on. Unto the undying, shining, swift-horsed sun, be propitiation with sacrifice, prayer, propitiation, and glorification. Yata ahu va'erio, the will of the Lord is the law of holiness, and so on. 1. We sacrifice unto the undying, shining, swift-horsed sun. When the light of the sun waxes warmer, when the brightness of the sun waxes warmer, then stand up the heavenly Yasts. That's kind of like a cherubim. By hundreds and thousands. They gather together. It's a worshiping being, basically. Its glory. They make its glory pass down. They pour its glory upon the earth made by Ahura for the increase of the world of holiness, for the increase of the creatures of holiness, for the increase of the undying, shining, swift-horsed sun. And when the sun rises up, then the earth made by Ahura becomes clean. The running waters become clean. The waters of the wells become clean. The waters of the sea become clean. The standing waters become clean. All the holy creatures, the creatures of the good spirit, become clean. 3. Should not the sun rise up, then the Da'avas would destroy all the things that are in the 7 Khorshed continents. Nor would the heavenly Yasts find any way of withstanding or repelling them in the material world. 4. He who offers up a sacrifice unto the undying, shining, swift-horsed sun, in its presence, to withstand darkness, to withstand the Da'avas, born of darkness, to withstand the robbers and bandits, to withstand the Yatus and Pa-Evrekas, to withstand death that creeps in unseen and offers it up to Ahura Mazda, offers it up to the Amesha Spentas, offers it up to his own soul. He rejoices all the heavenly and worldly Yasts, who offers up a sacrifice unto the undying, shining, swift-horsed sun. 5. I will sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, who has 1,000 ears, 10,000 eyes. I will sacrifice unto the club of Mithra, the Lord of the wide pastures, while struck down upon the skulls of the Da'avas. I will sacrifice unto that friendship, the best of all friendships, that reigns between the moon and the sun. 6. For his brightness and glory I will offer unto him a sacrifice worth being heard, namely, unto the undying, shining, swift-horsed sun. Unto the undying, shining, swift-horsed sun we offer up the libations, the ha'ama and meat, the barisma, the wisdom of the tongue, the holy spells, the speech, the deeds, the libations, and the rightly spoken words. Yanhe, hat, tam, all those beings of whom Ahura Mazda, and so on. 7. Yata ahu va'erio, the will of the Lord is the law of holiness, and so on. I bless the sacrifice and the invocation and the strength and vigor of the undying, shining, swift horse sun. Hashem, Ohu, holiness is the best of all good, and so on. Give unto that man brightness and glory, give him health, a body, and so on. Give him the bright, all-happy, blissful abode of the holy ones. And to 451. In verse 4, we have the implication that the uncleanliness, the thus, mixes with the earth during the night. Certainly jinn come out in the evening when they're coming out the most, and certain stuff goes on in the middle of the night. And we have the reference to the body of holiness in verse 1. You know, the law of holiness, we have the waxing larger of the sun. And apparently horse doesn't just mean horse. And, you know, we can look at... but later on, like among the Greeks and stuff like this, people ended up literally thinking that, you know, there was a horse out there that drove the sun and its chariot and that sort of thing. So, so we go back to the Aban Yast with some doubt in terms of the translation in verse 130 about richness in horses. And Ratha usually means a chariot, but it's perhaps the round shape of the chest of chariot meant. And so this reference in 131 can also perhaps refer to the well, you know, some stars occur in the middle of other stars, but if, you know, the sun has its you know, has its aura. And in verse 120, we have pa ite dana, a mantle or tunic. And we have again the you know, what she wears, Ordves Surah Anahita, in verse 123. It could be a girdle, because as they were talking about her lovely thickness up top, and what they ignore the you know, the rest. But of course, you can see that as somewhat symbolic in some sense, because there was a lot of treating the angels as female and certain forces of nature as female that weren't inherently female, but that's how they related to that. In the verse 113 of the Aban Yast, where we're talking about the corpse burner, Humayaka, and the wicked Aragat Aspa, we have, you know, both. Hamasak was translated by Misty as Sada. We have the both being killed by Isfendiar. We have the names of two brothers. Oh, Peshokonga, the corpse barrier. Hamakiaka, okay, those brothers. The numbers are a little off place and points. The text has a singular here in the rest of the sentence. The names of the two brothers form a sort of singular dvandva. Van Grasyanem, Karasavazdem, Ashavazdango, Thretahe. And in the present passage, Vistaspo Zaere va eres. And so Aragat Aspa is a brother of Argasps. His name is slightly altered in the Firdausi, and it's written as Ven Dariman. Well, different languages and different traditions may convey some of these names differently. Some of it could be meaning related. It's interesting how you see in like one tradition like sort of the same meaning that, oh well, it's this figure. It's like, yeah, they're using sort of the same meaning. They've translated it over. If we may trust the Shah Nama, she did not grant her favor to the last, as Zarir was killed by one of the generals of Argasp, Bidir Afsh. And verse 112, or maybe it's verse 113, is thought to be an epithet to Pesho Kanga, the most malicious. There's some doubtful translation with what's before that. And so we were having the mention. Oh, Zarir in Firdausi is the brother of Vistaspa. And later in that verse, we have the Araxes. And of the three mentioned, Aragat Aspa alone is known to Firdausi, well, mentioned in his poem. He is the celebrated Argasp, who waged deadly war against Gustasp to suppress the new religion. He stormed Balkh. Well, Zarathustra hated new religion, so, take that in mind. He stormed Balkh, slaughtered Lohurasp and Zarathustra. As this is being recorded, the Taliban is gaining strength, rule over Afghanistan that they never did. Now, if they're forcing, just like Zarathustra, Muhammad despised the idea of people founding religions. It was to bring back the old, but it was not some, they didn't allow forced conversion and that sort of thing. So we're, let's see what these people actually do, and you can comment regarding that. But there's a difference between the people that label themselves as part of the faith and people that are, what that faith actually does. So this popular and political Islam argument that people make doesn't really fall. But Balkh includes Afghanistan. Slaughtered Lohrasp and Zartusht, and was at last defeated and killed by Gustasp's son, Isfendyar. He is the Afrastyab of the Zoroastrian period. In the Vesta, he is not called a Turanian, Tura, but a Havyana. And we have mention of a Frazdanova is a lake in Sistan. From that lake arise Khorshed Dar Bami, otherwise known as Khorshed Yast. I don't know what that means. Something of the earth, right? The first of the 3 sons of Zarathustra, not yet born. Say, this son of stuff. So somebody of the cause, somebody of the same religion. Just like Zarathustra says, I'm not bringing a new religion. I'm trying to bring back the monotheism that was. Darmesteter is translated Buland. And we find that in, according to the law, the words... Oh, I'm not tall. I'm not sure what... The numbers seem to be off in there. The conversion of Vistaspa by Zarathustra is the turning point in the early history of monotheism, as the conversion of Zarathustra by her himself is in its heavenly history. And Lohrasp is what Parsi tradition calls, is it in part 13? I mean, at part 23, or is it part 24? What it's called. Because runs powerfully, a horse, rightly spoken words. Is it Kava Vistaspa? Okay. It's to be noticed that only Ahura and Zarathustra, and perhaps Vathra Navaza, offer the pure Zoroastrian sacrifice. And we have someone's name as someone who offers the pure sacrifices, and, you know, runs powerfully, the height of a man. Next to that, the Naotaras, the worshipper. So perhaps in 98, we're talking about that, you know, that's kings. The Hvogva family plays a great part in the religious legend as the Naotara family in the heroic one. 2 of the Hvogvas, Frasha Astra and Gamaspa, were among the first disciples of Zarathustra, and the prophet married Frasha Astra's daughter, Hvogve. For the Naotaras, there's more information in the Bunhis. Vistaspa did not belong to the Naotara family. Perhaps he was considered a Naotarite on account of his wife, Hutaasa, who was one. And then we have a text that, you know, in 95 here, the libations is what's listed here. Vispo Vahmem, worthy of all prayer. The reading Vispo Vahmem seems to be better. Well, just because it matches one piece of scripture better doesn't mean that that's actually the best thing. Cups are mentioned. Yama'u. And things are done out of joy. Certainly have joy in the worship. And which, you know, some people would be incapacitated for religious work, so the reference to the decaying teeth could mention that. Or the person confined, that makes sense too. And Valzaka, Varena, Vangau, you know, poisons. We have above the sun, if that's the right mention here in 50. Verse 90, we have Apax, Lagamenon, and the serpent Azeh Here Ozzy in its original naturalistic character, the storm fiend, the uncleanliness, filthiness, and the rivers ascribed to this poison. When the beds of the rivers are dry, the cause is that Arve Sura sends up her waters to the higher heavens, to the sun region, instead of sending them down to the earth. And some would be affluent of the Ranga, and between the earth and the region of the infinite life, there are 3 intermediate regions: the star region, the moon region, the sun region. The star region is the nearest to the earth, and the sun region is the remotest from it. Ardvasura has her seat in the star region, and in traditional, what people call paganism, one of the things that people refer to is the sunlight, the moonlight, the starlight. So there's a lot of symbolic layers, and some of these terms mean more than just, a horse or whatever. And there's certain symbolism involved in certain ways of certain speaking of things, certainly, as opposed to what's idealized nowadays for most of history. A thick, or at least curvy woman was the idealized thing, so this is what would be mentioned, even to the point of being overweight. Some cultures, particularly Indo-Aryan cultures, idealized a woman that, was